let's see if we can turn a hot mess of scraps into a hashtag paint with paper finished piece. My name is Hazel. This is Hazel Anaka Design, and I'm very grateful to have you here. So, Gwen, the trash witch, and Tony from Tony's Magical Arts and Crafts, I think I said that correctly, are the brain children behind this hashtag. And I love the idea because I'm kind of on a collage kick, a mixed media kick, and this just seemed like something I hadn't done before. And basically, I think they started it in January. They post their videos on the first of each month. I, of course, I'm marching to my own drummer here. And they welcome people joining, and they also, there is no pressure to, post or create on the first of the month. So the gist of it is to use collage as a way to substitute paper for paint and create something either abstract or recognizable. So some of you will know that I live, my husband and I are grain farmers in Alberta, Canada. One of our crops is canola, which when it's blooming, and depending on the variety, but when it's blooming, is, just a sea of yellow. Excuse me. Depending on the variety, it can also just smell, those flowers can also smell intoxicating. So much so that you can be driving by a field, with your windows rolled up and still smell it. So that's awesome. But the thing that I want, number one, because it's the first time I'm doing something like this, is to keep my composition very simple and to try to capture, and I already know I'm going to fail, because how is my little creation going to possibly compete with, Mother Nature and sort of, what the natural world has to offer us, God's handiwork. So in Alberta, our tagline is Big Sky Country. We most of the time have very clear, cloudless skies. And when there is a particular blue sky, the color is so intense. This doesn't do it, but it's that sort of a flat blue sky and a bright yellow field. Anyway, just to speed things along here a bit. Oh, I'm working. I guess I should tell you what I'm doing this in. Move this off to the side. This is Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook, 300 series. It says mixed media paper, vellum surface, 40 sheets, 9 by 12. And, it's got, 117 pounds. So it's got a wee bit of heft to it. And because the pages are big, and I wanted to keep both my efforts and the time it takes to do it kind of more manageable, I just measured off, 5 by 7 3/8 square. Again, that gives me the opportunity to do something similar down below, or a different exercise, or whatever I choose. So what I did, because these things were kind of within sight and within reach, I reached for papers that were either, parts of gel prints, that's a security envelope. And of course, if I've told you that this is the sky color, everything else sort of, varies away from that. But of course, a big one giant piece of that blue and a giant piece of yellow does not really an interesting collage make. So I'm hoping that I will get some depth and some interest happening here by mixing some of these pieces up. Now, you may not be able to see it, but I made a very light mark. Again, I don't want the horizon line. It's a poor design to, draw a straight line, midway in the picture plane. So typically you would want either the horizon line really high and minimize your sky, or the opposite, have big sky and a small foreground. And we know that the golden mean is typically talking about thirds. I've talked about that before. I won't belabor it. So what I did, first of all, I started doing this, and I'm thinking, well, whoa. I had written to Gwen, and I said, would you mind if I did this on camera as a video? And she says, no, by all means, go ahead. Had some very kind words for me, blah, blah, blah. I just wanted, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Gwen as one of my guests on Heart to Heart with Hazel, and she is a joy, a joy. Okay, so and again, these papers are kind of torn. I guess the outside edge, I maybe should have had a sharp straight line, but we're not going to worry about that. Now, because I lifted this up to show you, I kind of lost track of what my intentions were here. I think I left that as a right angle because I wanted it to be in the other corner. I'm starting with the sky, thinking that, when I put the foreground in, if it looks kind of like there's something seriously missing, then I can, maybe add a tree line or a little teeny weeny fence posts or something. So we'll see how that goes. And again, that line is just a guideline. There's no way that I can tear things exactly that shape. And I really don't want any, hard edges in the actual picture. So again, I'm just overlapping. Now I kind of thought, well, I could use these envelope papers to hint at a cloud or something. I don't know. I just knew that I kind of needed to incorporate some variety. These two are part of a gel print that I had done. I think I have a straight line there, so I must have intended that to be there. So let's not reinvent the wheel and start second guessing, because that just slows things down. Earlier this year, I did a video called Is Your Artwork Timid, or something like that, and how I intended to try to become a little more, and this obviously, I guess I could have probably cut that off. Of course, when you would like to lift it, that's when it really sticks. I'll just sort of shorten that a bit. Sometimes, when you have multiple layers, it begins to it becomes visible. I really didn't. Well, one of the other things I thought I could use, this was a partial image off, like a satellite picture of the Earth. So I don't know about that. I was trying where possible, to just kind of use the scraps around me. Now, one of the things, I don't know if that video has aired yet, I did a video on using my Anaglypta wallpaper, and that's one of the pieces that I worked on. So I have the same pattern in kind of an earth tone that I thought would be used in the foreground. I suppose, I don't know. See, now I'm starting to think too much. I also have that. Maybe I should just take a piece of this. And of course, there's nothing that says that I can't. We don't have such hilly land. Not that that has to be true to life either. And again, my pencil mark there was just a reminder not to divide the page or the space in half. Okay, that adds some interest. It's maybe bigger than it needs to be. But that's cool. There's a little translucent part there. Yeah, let's do it. Throw caution to the wind. Be so brave. So I was away for a couple of days because of a meeting that I'm having with the girls. Is that how I had it? Yeah. Because I have a meeting with the girls, I had to change our theater ticket date, and it was last night. It was Death of a Salesman, which of course is a really old play written by Arthur Miller. He was born in 1915, and that particular play won him a Pulitzer Prize and other awards. So, you know, kind of a classic. And there have been movies made off it, and of course all sorts of adaptations for stage. Anyway, it was 3 hours long with an intermission, 3 hours running time, I think. Well, I don't know. Maybe that 3 hours included, whatever. It was long. And because it started at 7:30, I thought, oh, maybe I will be able to, drive home. Instead, I ended up spending the night at my daughter's. Maybe just a little wisp of, oh, but that's the straight edge. Anyway, the roads were good and everything, but still, I just decided that, yeah, I might as well spend the night, which was good because we talked wedding plans and so on. That really seems like a poor little cloud. Anyway, and I don't think there's any sort of a spoiler alert, but that particular play is about, a guy who'd spent his career as a traveling salesman. He'd done it for 30 years or something. And, of course, if this was, I think it was written in the late 30s. So, people had, including Miller's own family, they had kind of been wiped out by the Depression and so on. So, I'm sure that anyone who lived through the Depression, it kind of marked them for life, one way or the other. So, it's pretty grim. It's not a picker-upper by any stretch of the imagination. Oh, look at this. It's like these clouds are kind of piling up here. So anyway, because we changed tickets, and there were 3 of us going, all 3 of us went, I didn't have a chance. I mean, we couldn't sit in our normal seats, and so I took the single seat that was a couple of rows higher than the other 2, and so I was sitting among strangers, And I said to the woman beside me during intermission, I said, "So, feeling suicidal yet?" And she says, "Well, we know it doesn't end well." And I says, "No, I mean, if you came in here in a good mood, do you sort of feel like, you know, offing yourself?" And she says, "Well, it's definitely not the kind of play you go to if you want to get cheered up." I'm thinking, well, yeah, understatement. Anyway, so that's where I was yesterday. Oh, and the other thing I did, because of course, you know, if you're going into the city, you should make it worth your while. This almost blends in there a bit, but we're not going to worry our little heads about that. Okay, let me, geez, I messed this all up here. So none of these yellows and goldy colors really, they don't capture the brilliance of a canola field in bloom. However, you know, I've already sort of let go of that idea. Okay, so this is some sort, this was on brown paper, and it's some sort of, you know, not very attractive, let's say, color combination, at least in my mind. So I think I intended to use, that has a straight edge, so I think I was intending to use one of these, maybe like so, and maybe, because this, when you think about it, it is shades of yellow, green, and brown, which would be soil and flowers and stems and so on. So I thought I could get away using that. However, I didn't get as far laying out the foreground as I did with the sky. See, that is more like the yellow that... Here's another piece of anaglypta. Here's another piece of anaglypta. And I thought this was kind of good because it's almost like well, mind you, that isn't making logical sense. I was going to say like furrow lines when a seed is dropped into the soil. But that obviously happened months before the blooming. So let's not try to make this anatomically correct. Okay, so I had this, and I thought, well, you know, that kind of goes well with the blue. Of course, I can't use it in a great big long piece like that. I did think it kind of, with that darker line there, it does kind of help us think about a horizon line. So I do have a few options, including, you know, some smaller pieces. So well, maybe let me try to work through that. Maybe I should tear that there. Okay, this has a, not that should be the determiner, but let's maybe pretend that straight edge is important. I could put something there. Now I have that little white gap, or I could lift this up. Maybe I should lift it up and maybe just tear that down a bit so it, again, looks more like topography and not like somebody cut it with a ruler. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly glue that down because honestly, we have to just begin somewhere. Oh, I started to say that, you know, when I go into the city, or when rural people, well, you know, you do it in your own life, I'm sure. Most of us don't have the time to just make special trips for anything. So you try to kill several birds with one stone. So yesterday was the day that I delivered the journals to the youth emergency shelter. And I was, well, number one, I'm made happy by such dumb things sometimes. I was just grateful that I was able to park right in front. Parking is, I feel very strongly about parking. let's do this. This piece is maybe kind of big to use all, but there's enough color variation. I'll probably get away with it. Anyway, so I was able to park, which was good. So I didn't have to schlep this bag, Walmart bag full of 16 bags, down the street very far. I had phoned the day before. They warned me that the front door would be locked, but pressed the buzzer. And eventually someone came. They, of course, had no inkling of who I was or why I was there. I don't know why. I didn't realize that they had sort of a corporate office downtown. And clearly they didn't bother letting anybody know, even though that's why she asked me for my name and when I'd be there. They didn't let anybody know that I was coming. So I basically had to explain what I was doing and why. And I took one journal out of a bag, and I showed the the extra supplies, just, sort of, here, peek in this bag and see that I included some extra supplies that the kids could use. And that was kind of how that went. Now, they seemed, this intake worker, Joanne is an intake worker. I don't know, I guess people hear the buzzer ring and it attracts a bit of a crowd. So a couple other staff members, I think, came along to see what's what. And they seemed to, they made all the appropriate murmurings. Oh, that's so nice. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Which is, obviously nice. But I took the opportunity to also ask a bit more about the place. I said, okay, so what is the average stay of these kids that come here? And again, they have day programs, but I was basically gearing, for my purposes, I needed to pick a number. So I was aiming for the 16 in beds, like for the residential part of this. Oh, I'm going to have a straight line. So she said they could be anywhere from, a night or two to months. And, depending when some other option opens up for them. Or maybe they go home again. I don't know. She didn't get into that. And so I thought, well, that's pretty good. And I said, so I explained to her, I realized that probably people are most generous around Christmas, but I kind of wanted to, to February is sort of the month of love and random acts of kindness and all of that. And she said, no, that's good. And I said, okay, so because people don't stay that very long, I said, if I choose to do this again, chances are they would be all new people. She said, well, not necessarily. I guess there's some recidivism there too, where, people sometimes do relapse or whatever and come back. So, anyway, that just, I kind of wanted to think that if I wanted to do this again, it would work. Because honestly, if you kind of fall into a groove, I think it's simpler and you save some of the finding your way around. Oh, is that going to be welcomed? Is that like, what is the need? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'm overcomplicating it. I don't know. It's just that sometimes you just want things to be easier. And if you already know that, found an unmet niche, found an unmet need, it's just easier to replicate that than think about, which agency, what would I do, how would I go about it, all that sort of stuff. you know, I'm not really explaining what I'm doing here because honestly, I'm not sure I know what I'm doing here. But I'm thinking what I'm aiming for is variety to indicate changes in maybe topography and coloration and so on. So we shall see how this works. So anyway, she gave me the cell number there because obviously it's different than the one on the website. And she took my email address. She said, you know, hopefully in a couple of weeks after we've had a chance to put this stuff out there or, you know, share it or whatever, you know, we'll have some feedback for you. And I thought, well, that would be nice to know. And she says, I can already think of some people who are staying here who would just love this. It doesn't sound like they have a lot of supplies or whatever, so I'm glad I included those extras. I was a little taken aback when right off the bat she was saying, did you use new materials? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I have to now justify why I use some stuff that's old. And the only reason she was asking is because if there were new, if there was a new component to it, I could have told her the value and get a tax receipt. And I knew that I had bought some stuff purposely for these bags, but I didn't do it for a tax receipt. So I said, no, we're not going to worry about that at all. I need to do some covering of this big green thing. So maybe that would work there. And again, if I would have taken more time to plan this, well, number one, I probably wouldn't have had time to tell the stories, but I also, you know, it might have looked different than me just kind of doing this. I'm not going to press down really hard at that end because, you know, I might want to tuck something in there like so. That's going to be lumpy bumpy, but that's okay. Maybe those are molehills underneath there. That's why it's like that. Or I could do this. Oh, let's tuck it under. So again, you know, I think with this sort of an approach to collage, you know, you have to muster your imagination here a bit too. Now this is a little offbeat, I realize, but hey, why not? It's got a wee bit of purple in there. So that too would help break up that big green thing, but I'll wait with that piece. I should probably also use this. You know, this is really quite crazy how tiny these things are. If I thought that straight edges were going to make this look better, obviously it would be easier. I wouldn't be losing some of my width at this point, but that could be cute there. Now, I think I have way more of this if I need it, so let's just make a straight cut at the bottom. When I was telling this to my daughter that I had dropped these things off, she mentioned that she had donated something there once. And I said, oh, what? And she said toiletries. And, you know, there was, I guess, maybe some street people or something. It was a bit, you know, she felt a wee bit threatened when she was doing it. I don't know what time of day or season or anything it was, but I thought, oh, toiletries. It used to be that every time we stayed in a hotel, I made it a practice to take home whatever. I took home whatever wasn't nailed down. No, that's not quite true. You know, the little toiletry things, because in the past, Hillary has donated those sorts of things to women's shelters. And I thought, well, I can contribute to that cause. Yeah, maybe that has to be there. I'll need something else for that outer edge. Oh, maybe this. That could probably be okay. So far, this guy here is the culprit because it is like, you know, land would be horizontal. But it is what it is, so we're going to have to work with it. Now, I don't know if either of those ladies did any additional, can't remember. When I looked at Tony's channel, I think she was just leading, kind of doing the launch. She hadn't posted her project yet, and I haven't been home to look at the rest. I think, like, my intention was, if I need to draw in some trees or something, then, you know, I reserve the right to do it. Okay, maybe I'll glue that down. Oh, I have a strip here that I have to fill. Maybe that's better. So I'll just tear this here to get rid of some of that white. Again, just pinch off the least I can get away with here. Anyway, so just back to the toiletries. So I'm thinking, I guess I'll start doing that as well, because, you know, next time I go, if I go there again, I could add that to whatever I'm taking. So, you know, I know this is probably true for most women, we tend to, trying to break the habit though, we tend to, you know, experiment a lot with health and beauty kind of stuff. And, you know, it doesn't help that sometimes when we find a perfect product, they just promptly discontinue it. But sometimes people are on the lookout for, you know, something, well, as our skin and so on changes, sometimes that happens out of necessity, but sometimes I think people are just eager to go shopping, and that's a good excuse to do it. New shampoo, new hair products, different deodorant, you know, you name it, there's always something out there to buy, not to mention the actual makeup part. So I, like you, have too much of that stuff, and I don't know if Bath and Body Works exists in the U.S., but it definitely does in Canada. And of course, they've got their marketing down to a science. Their bundling of, you know, buy 3 for $20, buy 2, get 1 free, blah, blah, blah. You know, that whole, in other words, making it attractive to buy more of something than you wanted to in the first place. And most of us are eager to save, so we fall for it. I have a little issue here. I might have to, well, I could use another piece of this bumpy stuff, because repeating never hurts. Anyway, so I've sort of been on a mission that I refuse to buy anything more until I use up what I have. Just because it seems so, so very wasteful. And okay, but I need some separation here. Would that be, what is this? That's white. Oh, and I also have this, which is another kind of anaglypta. Let's put some of this in here. Where do I want to cut it off? I don't think, I can't afford to. Oh, can I? I was going to say I can't afford to. Maybe if I used a, whoops, not that. Something like this. Well, this one says decal, but it's just to, you know, basically, whoops, chew up the edge a bit so it isn't such a straight edge. I should figure out how long I want it, and then yeah, so I'm sure I could come up with a number of you know, hair elastic. Mind you, I went through hair bands and clips, like, and so on. Donated those not so long ago, but I probably have some unopened product that I could share too. Did I ever tell you? Don't think I did. The word I chose for 2026 is share. And that can, you know, the meaning there could be as broad or as narrow, I guess, as I choose to make it. The sharing can be sharing advice, opinions, information, physical items, time, you know, it could be any of those things. So, oh, I kind of like that. Now I do have that. It's almost like I don't have enough paper in this world to do this. And I don't want to start digging through drawers. And let me just, oh, I have another piece of this that's quite small. Yeah, let's use this. And then we're getting close to being done here, if you can imagine. I have no idea. I'm scared to look at the time. Anyway, sharing. So, you know, by doing those journals, that's one form of sharing. If I ever get my act together and get some digitals finished and uploaded, whoops, I better not go that way, or I'm exposing a little white spot. That could be, you know, do some freebies that way. That can be sharing. Okay, let's see what happens if I try to use some of these. I need to stand up and see what's what here. Well, I think, you know, I have to say, I think it is evident that this is sky and land. So that makes me happy. I could probably tuck that under there, make it look a little more like it was layered. Now I did bring my Pitt pens. Wait, what's the actual name here? I'll look at it in a second and tell you. Thinking if I had to draw in even just some skeletal looking, tree trunks and so on, I could. Sorry, I'm just going to lift that up. See, I guess if I were looking at this with a critical eye, I would say that there's far more tactile, there's more texture, tactile texture in the foreground than there is in the sky. And that's because of all this anaglypta. All I have for blue is that piece that I showed you. So we'll see about that, whether that should be part of the got this piece as well. I thought I was going to use, didn't I say I was going to use something with a little purpley cast to it? Oh, this. Too much white there, I would say. Would have been better had I thrown away some of these things that aren't in the... Oh, and I also found something like this that, could, but that's way too tall. Like if this is, a quarter of a mile away, then that tree wouldn't be that big. But maybe let me get rid of some of this stuff and let me stop picking up the same pieces over and over again. Well, I'll leave those guys there because they could reinforce the idea of, landscape. I think I don't know what happened to that. I guess I could decide whether or not I wanted maybe not. This piece probably does not work here. Let's tear this down and see. I don't think so. I probably shouldn't be trying that hard to force this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So give up graciously. Maybe here it's okay. Wonder if I could tuck it under. I think everything is probably pretty well adhered. We're not going to worry about that little straight edge there. Okay. Maybe let's take a smidge, a teensy-weensy smidge of this orangey bit here. And see what that does over here. It probably, well, maybe I'm trying to talk myself into something. I think I'm bound and determined to use it, so I'm going to make it work. I think it adds a little bit of, well, I don't know what, but now my sky feels very flat because here I've got overlapping, I've got repetition, and it seems like the sky was left to its own devices. I'm also afraid that this experience, well, mind you, this experience of trying to replicate a gorgeous phenomenon in nature, I guess, should make me be even more appreciative of the real thing. Oh, see, that's good. It covers that bit of white there. Feels like I should do something over this big expanse of green. Oh, I still have this, which has been repeated a couple of times. And I have this. Let's use this one. This is very, if my pieces were a little more shaped like this, it would look more like shrubs or something on a fence line. Let's see if I can try to make you understand what I'm talking about. See if I can help myself understand what I'm talking about. You know, and if I did some mark making, that all of a sudden begins to look almost tree-like. And it bridges the gap between sky and land. And we know that tree lines are, or fence lines are uneven in height and color. That sky is getting smaller and smaller. Pretty soon I'm going to be wishing for more of that green. Oh, I have this. Okay, I like this, so I'm putting it there. And I may just add a couple of pen marks to delineate, you know, some foliage, some shrubbery type shapes. Oh, and I was going to glue this down. I don't like the way that ends in the middle of nowhere. Honestly, if this was supposed to be a way to use up scraps, I've made how many more pieces? And I should also get over the idea of making this realistic, because I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, what in a field, what would that be? But why do I have to know the answer to that? Why should I trouble my pretty little head with the question even? We don't need to know. We don't need to worry about things like that. The other day, Tuesday of this week, whatever day that was, February, oh dear, February 2nd or 3rd or something like that. 3rd, I did kind of a, oh no, I don't like that line. A spontaneous, mixed media live. It wasn't a very demanding project. I was very grateful for the people who stopped in and chatted and so on, contributed. So I will do that again, but it'll be something a little more difficult. Like I still have, long ago I asked you guys to vote on which of those mixed media canvases you wanted me to work on. So the resounding, the piece that got the most votes was the teal and orange one. So I'll have to do that. Plus I have some other ideas of things I want to do on camera. Okay, maybe I'm going to cover my glue for a second. Find a, what do I want here? Well, let's try kind of a darkish brown. Doing a very loose, maybe green would be better. That's such a bright green. Yeah, this is more like it. You know, some mark making that will look a bit like foliage. Some, by laying my pen down and making vertical marks, whoops, it can be, not that we could see much of this from any distance. Like if I were to look across the road at this particular field, I would not be able to see individual branches or anything like that. So I don't want to get all carried away with that because it's not. And that sometimes that's all you need to just create the illusion, and then people's eyes and minds will fill in the difference or the balance. Okay, so we have an unfortunate transition there, so let's put this little guy in there. And sometimes, you know, when you're like on a field, you can't cultivate and or spray for weeds to the point that you get that buffer zone between this field and this field. So that's why there would always be grasses or small shrubs or small trees that have, you know, gotten established there. Well, see, that could be like an eye stopper at the edge of the page. I guess I could trust myself to cut that with scissors too. Jeez. Although sometimes, and it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, because if a little bit of sky were to show through there, that's even better. Yeah, take it away from the edge of the page. And it looks a little more realistic. Anyway, the jury is still out on whether or not this looks like anything, but I've enjoyed the challenge of it all, so I'm definitely going to do this again. Okay, do I want maybe something like, not that these are labeled. Oh yeah, they are. I'm going to take this blue and just do a few marks here and there as a, I don't know, transition. That maybe was a better color choice than this brown. So, you know, if you've made a boo-boo in a color choice, you can always, and of course, this is going to be darker at ground level than it would be at the top where the sun is shining. And again, you know, like with this line that I'm creating here, it's kind of one of those what we call coming and going kind of lines. It's not straight. And you know, sometimes when you look at shrubs or trees, you do see a blue in them. So let's add a bit here. And it also indicates a depth. So these guys aren't all standing here like little soldiers. They are different varieties. You know, with color differences in them. This guy seems a little inadequate here. Okay, let me look at this. I think I've spent enough time on it. Sorry, I just need to. You know what is unfortunate is this straight line here. So sorry, I'm going to have to break that up. Or I could also do that again. Who said that only the sky can get marks? And in fact, just wondering. We also know that clouds are typically darker at the bottom. So if I do some of that, that helps give them a little more shape. Anyway, what I just kind of zoned out there for a second because what I intended to do was actually try to break that straight line up with some mark making. but I need to pick a more earth tone-y color. So let's see if this gives us what we want here. And again, I'm doing vertical strokes because obviously if it's something growing, it's going to be vertical, not... Yeah, it's too bad that I didn't... I guess by repeating these things, see, and I can, you know, it. this is really working on the fly here. I don't know if this is what the girls intended. But again, as Gwen said, my art, my project, my channel, you know, go for it. That does help break that up a bit, but I think I need another earth tone. And sometimes if you think, made a mistake, shouldn't have done that, your finger blotting and smearing is the best tool you can rely on. Oh, look at that. I can even... I better not get carried away here. No. No. That did not solve the problemo. That would, and it blends, because it came off the same piece of paper, it blends into the piece above it, but yet it breaks up the piece below it that I'm trying to. Okay, that helps. Do we have another eensy beensy scrap? That feels like it's too big. Honestly. Isn't this silly? 1/16 of an inch wide. That is the end result. Whoops. The end result of working on such a small space. If we were doing this on a full sheet of watercolor paper, which is 22 by 30, we wouldn't be fooling around with these 1/16 of an inch pieces. Yeah, doing it. And, you know, I guess I will apologize if you're finding this tedious and you're thinking, okay, woman, you know, figure it out, finish it up. Well, number one, there are playback speed options. There is the option of switching to another channel, but there's also the idea that if I'm doing this for me, then there's a personal investment, a personal challenge afoot here. And you know, I guess maybe it's a bit presumptuous to think that because I'm doing this to please myself and get it as good as I can possibly get it with the skills that I have at this moment, it's, I guess, a bit presumptuous to think that, you know, you might care about that too. I don't know. I guess I feel like I wish I would have had more texture in the sky. Another thing that is not good are these two lines, even though they're different colors, these two lines meeting right there. I better break that up with something. That's not the answer. Maybe that is the answer. Or without this white, it might be the answer. Okay, this is the last piece I'm putting down with you guys. I'm kind of liking what that purple orangey thing does. Do you see how I just reneged on my word? I said it was the last piece. Well, no, it's not. Let's put this little guy in the foreground. I gotta do something about that white. I might just... can't do that. Maybe I have to do this. Okay, I quit. I quit. Gwen, Tony, I hope that this turns out to be in the spirit in which you created this challenge. I have to say, looking at it now with a bird's eye view, I'm kind of pleased with it. This has now become a very white spot. I just keep making that darker instead of hitting the actual part down below. Okay, thank you so much for being here. If you have persevered with me to the end, expect to see me do this again because I have enjoyed this process. As I'm standing here looking at this, it occurs to me, okay, very clearly tree, clump of bushes and trees. This is not as distinct as this, but probably got carried away there, so I have to somehow fix that. But it also occurs to me that we can pretend that there's a slough here somewhere, or a low spot that wasn't seeded, and there could be another clump of trees or something coming in off either side of the picture plane that would introduce more trees. But I don't think I'm going to do that, but it is something to consider for another project, and it reinforces the idea of having depth in your picture plane. You know, far away, a little bit closer, and really close. But I need to do something. I love how this one turned out, and I love these guys. This, not so much. Anyway, I will figure that out, and I'll be sure to show you again at some future point. Thanks, guys. We shall see you in the next one. Bye.